What's happening? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show. DRF TV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forum's Twitter handle, at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forum's Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. This is the preview edition, the first one of 2019. Usually this preview edition, we usually look ahead, take a look at a race using Formulator and replays, maybe look at some sporting events coming up from a betting standpoint, number of different things. This one, a little bit different, because in a way it's almost a review, because I'm going to go over my Eclipse Award ballot that I submitted just a few days ago as we turned here into 2019. I'm only going to go over the horse awards. I'm not going to go over the human connections. If you have questions or you'd like to know more about that, again, on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. Currently, my avatar is Peanuts because I'm paying up the second half of my wager with Peter Thomas Fornatal and Jonathan Kinchen from the Breeders' Cup. So those will be up there for a little while. But if you see it and you get confused, that's me. I'm the one with the peanuts for the emoji, or the avatar, excuse me. Following that, I'll come up with the NFL Wildcard Superfecta. Those of you that normally follow along with the preview, you know that throughout the NFL season, we go out with the NFL trifecta. A disappointing finish to the season. Went 0-3 in that last week. I think it was the only week that I got shut out. And ultimately, it hurt the win percentage a little bit, but we were still in the positive. We were still in the black for the entirety of the year. Hopefully, we can get this thing back on track here with the NFL coming up here again. You got 4 games on Wild Card Weekend, so we'll go over those at the end of it. For those of you that listen to this in podcasts, like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you're over on YouTube, click that subscribe button. You'll get all the latest that DRF TV has to offer, as long as you have that little bell icon lit up. If you have a line through it, you're not going to get any of the videos. Make sure that you've got the line taken care of, that's gone, that the bell itself is there, because then you'll get everything that we've got over on DRF TV. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, iTunes, however you listen to your podcast, write us a review, give us a positive rating. It's always greatly appreciated. You know what? I say give us a positive rating. If you thought something sucked, give it a negative rating. We need that positive feedback. Or not positive feedback, I shouldn't say that. Need the sort of constructive criticism, where if there's something that you'd like changed, and at the end of the day, we're trying to produce content that the viewer and the listener enjoys. So if there's something that you'd like changed, you have different ideas, you'd like some other pieces here and there, again, you got it beneath the video player on YouTube or on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. Like I said, we'll dive into the Eclipse Award ballot. We'll kick this off. I'm only going to go over the horses. Some of them are going to have replays. Some of them won't have replays. Some of them I think deserve to be spoken about a little bit more so in depth than others. Some divisions were lock, stock, and barrel. Didn't think there was really anything to it. Others, I suppose you can go a few different ways. We'll kick things off and we'll go right in order. The 2-year-old males, and we'll probably break this up into a sort of 6 and 5. We'll go over the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, and older horses. Then we'll sort of split it up and go with the sprint horses, the turf runners, and then horse of the year to button things up. 2-year-old male, to me, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. I'd be surprised if anyone went against Game Winner, just based on what he did. He's undefeated. He's gone out there. He's won everywhere he's raced. He was an impressive winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and I understand maybe he's not the most talented in the Baffert barn. Perhaps that's improbable. Another horse that I would imagine will be a finalist for 2-year-old male. Perhaps it's Coliseum, who we were going to see on Saturday coming up in the Sham out at Santa Anita. Perhaps someone else. Who knows? But based on what he's done, I didn't really think Improbable had a great argument against him. Didn't run in the Breeders' Cup. A little bit of a later bloomer. I know he ran on the Breeders' Cup undercard, but to me, what Game Winner did overall, I think he deserves to win 2-year-old male, and ultimately that's where I went. 2-year-old female, I could see this being one of the divisions that I might catch a little bit of heat on. And again, if you agree, disagree, whatever your thoughts are, at Bernier_Matt or beneath the video player on YouTube. Jaywalk is a very deserving winner of the 2-year-old filly award. An emphatic winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, going 2 turns for the first time. An emphatic winner of the Grade 1 Frisette, a 1-turn mile at Belmont Park. I can understand anyone that says that, just plain and simple, she was the best. But for me, I have to go back a few years, and I believe it was the first year that I worked for the Daily Racing Forum, and it was the first year I had a vote for the Eclipse Awards. And I got down to Horse of the Year, and I had a really difficult time going between 2 horses, California Chrome and Shared Belief. Those of you that have been following me for basically since the TV show know how fond I am of Shared Belief and always was, and I think he was one of the best horses I've seen as I've paid attention to the game. Certainly not as long as some other folks have. But at the end of the day, from a credential standpoint for that year for Horse of the Year, I thought it was a scenario where California Chrome, he had more accomplishments, but I didn't think he was the better horse because when they matched up head-to-head, Shared Belief was just simply better. He was just much, much better than California Chrome. Ultimately, I voted for California Chrome, and immediately after I submitted the ballot, I was regretting it. I was disappointed that I went that route because all along, in my heart of hearts, I thought Shared Belief was the better horse. And I understand that you can't always use that, but I think maybe this year in the Horse of the Year argument, we'll talk about that at the back half, there's a little bit of that can come up for some people, and understandably so. With this division, what I saw from Newspaper of Record, plus the accomplishments, I felt compelled to vote for her as opposed to Jaywalk. And it's not a knock whatsoever. It's not meant to be disrespect to Jaywalk at all. I think she is a class filly. Who knows? She can go on. She can win the Kentucky Oaks. She can win the Distaff next year. She can win Breeders' Cups for years to come. She might. It's not a question about her talent. I just looked at this and thought, what I saw from Newspaper of Record in 3 lifetime starts, she's never won by less than 6 lengths in any one of her 3 lifetime starts, and her crowning achievement to date was beneath the Twin Spires down to Churchill Downs in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. Here's the stretch run. Larry Colmus on the call.
Rod Ortiz Jr. has not even moved a muscle. They're into the stretch with Newspaper of Record now set down, and she explodes with power once again with 1 furlong to go. And then it's Stellar Agent on the inside, followed by Concrete Rose. They're coming down to the 16th pole, and it's Newspaper of Record. Stop the presses. This is one fabulous, fabulous filly. Oh, she won it by 7 lengths as East got second late.
I just thought that was just visually spectacular, and I have a hard time. This is a very difficult one for me to decipher, and I think Jaywalk's going to win. And I think it's going to be a relatively comfortable victory, if I'm being honest. But there's a part of me that thinks the Newspaper of Record could potentially be a special kind of horse. And I wouldn't have been comfortable with myself had I had the sort of Horse of the Year vote from years ago come back and rear its ugly head here for me internally, saying, if I think Newspaper of Record is a more talented horse and the accomplishments are right there, I kind of feel like I have to go with her over Jaywalk. Again, no disrespect to the folks connected with Jaywalk. I think she's going to probably win, and she's a deserving winner. I personally think Newspaper of Record is the 2-year-old filly champion. 3-year-old males, this one, if it's not unanimous, then I don't know what we're doing here and what the award voters are looking at. Look, there's a Triple Crown winner, and for the 3-year-olds, that is the end-all, be-all. And for most folks in racing, the Triple Crown, period, is the end-all, be-all. Justify should be an absolute slam dunk. He should be unanimous here for 3-year-old champion. Let's go back and relive what many people would say is the crowning achievement. I would even say it's the crowning achievement of the entire year, the individual accomplishment. The crowning achievement, Justify winning the Belmont Stakes and winning the Triple Crown.
And Gronkowski has cut the corner, and they're into the stretch. And Justify comes roaring home to a raucous Belmont Park with 1 furlong to run. Gronkowski and Hoffberg trying to run him down. Vino Rosso is 4th, a 16th to go. Justify is still there. Justify from Gronkowski. He's just perfect, and now he's just immortal. Justify is the 13th Triple Crown winner.
Again, really not much more for me to go in with that division. I think it's a slam dunk there. And I also think the 3-year-old fillies are a slam dunk. If Monomoy Girl is not the overwhelming, and I would even go as far as to say if she is not the unanimous 3-year-old filly champion, I don't know what we're doing here. She won the Kentucky Oaks. She won the Breeders' Cup Distaff. She won the Coaching Club American Oaks. She won the Acorn. She won the Ashland. I mean, she put together an incredible campaign. And in a year, if this was another year and maybe some of the credentials for some of the other major players were a little bit weaker, there's a real argument to be made that Monomoy Girl should be a Horse of the Year candidate. I voted for her 3rd. You need to put, so the way that, and I probably should have started with this at the top. For those of you that are unfamiliar as far as the Eclipse Awards are concerned, the voters, we put in 3 finalists, 1, 2, 3. You rank them accordingly. The champion, the votes only go toward the first place votes. So you may have more third place votes than anyone else. You may have more second and third place votes than anybody else. That'll get you as a finalist, but that's not ultimately what goes toward your championship sort of voting. The votes are only for the first place votes as far as year-end awards are concerned. The most votes for the top 3, that'll get you in as a finalist. I think Monomoy Girl should be a finalist. I can't imagine there's any scenario whatsoever where she ends up being a horse that can vie for the championship. But in any other year, I think she would be a deserving Horse of the Year candidate. This year, I think she should be a finalist. I don't think she has a realistic chance to win that award, but she should be a unanimous 3-year-old filly, in my opinion. Older Dirt Male and Older Dirt Female. Older Dirt Male, to me, was pretty cut and dry. I think Accelerate, based on what he did, the overall body of work, I've discussed it a number of times, and we'll discuss it again as we go into the Horse of the Year argument between he and Justify. I just think what he did, that was also unprecedented. Going through winning the Santa Anita Handicap, the Gold Cup out at Santa Anita, the Pacific Classic, and then coming back and winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. Oh, by the way, throw in a little bit of a grade 1 in between there with the Awesome Again. You know, that's an unprecedented campaign for an older horse. And he did so running fast times for the most part. The last 2 races, admittedly, a little bit on the slower side than I would have liked. But we know on his best day, he was capable of a giant performance. I just think his crowning achievement, it's going to be the Breeders' Cup Classic. John Sadler, he gets his first one. To me, his best race, bar none, was the Pacific Classic, where he just absolutely whistled, threw up a 115 Beyer speed figure, and made everybody else look like pack mules, which is not the case. They were all grade 1 caliber runners. To me, Lock, Stock, Barrel, nothing to think about there. Accelerate, Older Male, as far as the dirt runners are concerned. Older Dirt Female was a division that I, truth be told, did not want to vote for anyone. I did, because I kind of feel like it was an obligation in a situation like this. The way that Abel Tasman finished her year, I couldn't vote for her. Elate didn't win a grade 1, and she only ran twice. I ultimately went with Unique Bella, and I know, you know, it's almost like we forgot about Unique Bella because she's been gone for as long as she has, but she's 3 times a grade 1 winner, and I believe a dual grade 1 winner and a grade 2 winner, and she just missed out in that race, the Apple Blossom down there in Oaklawn, and that was after she threw a fit loading into the gate. And again, at the end of the day, I may not have ever loved Unique Bella, but just from a credential standpoint, and I know she beat LaForce in 2 of those races, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about LaForce, but I don't think LaForce's name should ever come up with an Eclipse Award. That really is a division to me that it's, I don't know that there's a good answer there. I ended up going with Unique Bella. I can't be outraged with anyone that gets voted for in there just because I think they're all kind of blah. She's ultimately who I landed on in a division that I have zero opinion whatsoever. I just kind of went with what she had accomplished as far as the totality of her campaign. It was a very brief one, which I don't like, and I usually dock horses for that, but at the same time, there weren't many longer campaigns, and the longer campaigns, they completely fell apart at the end. So ultimately, Older Dirt Female, I chose to go with Unique Bella. Let's go to the sprint divisions. Male sprinter, to me, this one's really, again, kind of a no-brainer. You look and see what Roy H. had accomplished. I thought perhaps he had lost a little bit on the fastball at stages throughout the year. He came back in basically better than ever fashion, culminating with a repeat in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and very likely a repeat as far as male sprinter is concerned. Here is the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Roy H. winning again.
Lead at the top of the stretch. Right by Promises Fulfilled. Imperial Hint is trying to close on the outside. Then Distinctive B. Whitmore is making progress. Here he comes splitting horses. Roy H. has got a big lead though. At the 16th pole, he's 4 in front. Whitmore closes the gap into second as they come to the line. Roy H. does it again. He won it by 4 lengths under Paco Lopez.
Never looked like a loser. Rounding the far turn, I turned to Eddie Olczyk and I said, this horse is going to win by 15. Didn't win by quite that many, but he never looked like he was going to lose that race. An impressive job from this horse, and again, he just rock solid. If he shows up and runs his best, more likely than not, no one else can run with his best. And you just wonder, he's a gelding. In theory, you keep him sound, you keep him happy and healthy. This could continue on for a little ways, so hopefully everything stays good with him. I think he's well on his way to another Eclipse Award. As far as the fillies and mares are concerned, this is another one that it's kind of, I don't have as big a problem voting for who I did. Usually this is, to me, one of the weaker divisions. Last year, you look and see, Unique Bella ultimately ended up winning. I voted for her reluctantly, but I just could not vote for Bar of Gold, who won the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, and I have such a hard time basing an award off of one individual accomplishment. So with this instance, I thought in that Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint that Marley's Freedom ran the best race, given the slow start and the wide trip and X, Y, and Z. And I understand she comes back and the Gopher Wand was a mile race, so technically it wasn't a sprint. But you looked and seen what she had done throughout the rest of the 2018 campaign. To me, I don't have any problem voting for Marley's Freedom as champion female sprinter. I don't know that I would have a problem if a horse like Shamrock Rose wins, because she won the Breeders' Cup and she had won the Raven Run just a few weeks prior out at Keeneland. But again, that to me, that's more so awarding one race. And I appreciate the folks that look at it and say, well, the Breeders' Cup is our championship event and X, Y, and Z. And look, it's hard to ignore. Winning a Breeders' Cup goes a long way. But I don't think the Breeders' Cup should be the end-all, be-all. And for the folks that have complained about the Breeders' Cup taking too much starch out of the back half of the campaign, well, that would be my sort of suggestion to them, would be to look at it a little bit more and say, if you feel that way, don't reward horses that they're only, they run 3 times and they win the Breeders' Cup and all of a sudden they're champion whatever. If you have a horse that runs second in the Breeders' Cup but has 6 other Grade 1 wins, maybe you should award them something. Just again, I'm throwing different things out there, but at the end of the day, would I be appalled if Shamrock Rose were to be champion female sprinter? No, not at all. I just think Marley's Freedom, the overall body of work, and including the fact that I think she ran arguably the best race in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, I like her as female sprint champion. Male turf runner. This division to me is very similar to what we discussed with the older dirt females. It's kind of gross. Don't know that there's anyone that is truly, truly deserving of it. I thought long and hard about it, and I went through and looked at all of the names of the horses that are, that run in the big Grade 1 route races, whether it's the Arlington Million. I love Robert Bruce. I think from a talent standpoint, he is as good as it gets, but it's kind of hard for me to ignore the fact that his last 2 races were certainly disappointing, and he very clearly is much better on one surface than another, meaning on firm going as opposed to any kind of ground with give in it. I look at a horse like Channel Maker, who I liked in the Breeders' Cup Turf. Didn't pick his feet up that day. But then you go through and you look at the overall body of work and what he had accomplished. He's a Grade 1 winner. He finished second in a Grade 1. He finished third in a Grade 1. He did those at distances ranging between 1.5 miles and a flat mile. People forget that he finished third in that Kilroe earlier in the year out at Santa Anita. But I go, only one Grade 1. I look at Glorious Empire. I think he's going to get some, I don't want to call it recency bias with him, but the way that he went and won that race at Gulfstream on opening weekend, I think a lot of people looked at that and they said immediately, that's it, he's the winner. Well, we forget that he was a complete no-show in the Breeders' Cup Turf, very similar to Channel Maker. His big wins to date were a dead heat with Channel Maker and a win over Channel Maker. So really, if you like Glorious Empire, you kind of have to like a horse like Channel Maker as well. I know there's some talk about some of these other horses. I ultimately landed on Stormy Liberal. And I don't know that there's ever been a time where a turf sprinter has really merited consideration for the male turf category. But I kind of feel like from just a consistency standpoint, this horse is rock solid. He's won races at 5, 5.5, 6.5, different configurations, different tracks, different conditions of the turf tracks. And he was just consistent. And I think that, to me, really was the hallmark of this division. It was a lack of consistency. And really, Stormy Liberal was the most consistent turf horse that we had all year. I have a hard time giving a horse like Expert Eye the award when you ran here one time. I need more than that. Sure, maybe your overall body of work overseas and you sort of combine that with what you did here in the Breeders' Cup. I get all that. I just have a hard time rewarding a horse that runs here one time with one of our awards. Wouldn't it kind of be crazy if you just think about it? And this is going to be a little bit of a tip-off. I'll save it. I'll save it for the next division. Ultimately, male turf, I'm going a little bit outside the box. I think he's going to get some consideration, though. I voted for Stormy Liberal as male turf champion. Female turf champion. This is the one where, kind of dovetailing, I have a hard time awarding our year-end award to a horse that's run here one time. Anyone will look at it and say, Enable is probably the best horse. Let's call a spade a spade. Enable's probably the best horse out of all these names that we're going to go over, including Accelerate, including Justify, including Roy H. From a talent standpoint, Enable is probably the best horse. She's arguably a top 2 or 3 horse in the world. I have a very difficult time giving her an award when she ran here once. On the flip side, you have a horse that she didn't win the Breeders' Cup Turf, but she did win the Filly and Mare Turf, and you combine that with a number of other Grade 1 races throughout the year, and that's Sister Charlie. And to me, she is the most deserving from start to finish of an Eclipse Award as far as females on grass are concerned. Here's her win in the 2018 Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf.
Dartbrook, Sister Charlie on the far outside, into the final furlong, a raving beauty, trying to hold off Wild Illusion, and here she comes. Sister Charlie is there too, and then it's Magic Wand, a 16th to go. Here comes Wild Illusion, after a raving beauty, Sister Charlie on the far outside, the 3 of them coming down to the line, and it is Sister Charlie, who ran down Wild Illusion in the last strides to do it, a raving beauty.
She beat good fillies coming over from Europe. She won at a number of different distances. I thought the Breeders' Cup was going to be difficult for her at 1 3/8. I thought she'd be better going shorter. She prevailed. Chad did a good job with her. And I understand, again, Enable, from a talent standpoint, is better than Sister Charlie, in all likelihood. But Enable running here once, I don't care that it was the phenomenal feat of the ARC Breeders' Cup double. She ran here one time, and I just personally, I have a very difficult time giving a horse that ran here once as opposed to a horse that ran here all year and won basically all of our big races as far as fillies and mares on grass are concerned. I have a very difficult time giving the award to Enable. I think Sister Charlie is the most deserving, and I ultimately went with her. And that gets us to the Horse of the Year topic. I've addressed this a few different times. My tone hasn't changed much. It's a 2-horse race. Again, I really believe if these 2 horses were a little bit lesser, Monomoy Girl would have a very, very serious case to be up in this area as well. Unfortunately for her and her connections, both Justify and Accelerate they're just rock solid, no matter how you chop it up. And I feel like so much of this voting it comes down to consistency. And with the 2-year-olds, their campaigns are this long anyway. So you're only going to get 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 months out of them for the entirety of the year. But these other horses, I want to see, did you run consistently from start to finish? And there are going to be certain divisions where reluctantly I have to make a vote. I have to vote for a Unique Bella who ran for this long in the entire campaign. Because the other horses that ran longer, they didn't run well. So I'm not going to just reward you just for mediocrity. I want to reward horses that run longer campaigns throughout the year and sort of maintain that level of success. Justify, he would be a deserving Horse of the Year. I think he is probably going to be Horse of the Year. I believe the stat is that there has never been a Triple Crown winner that was not voted Horse of the Year. And if he were to win, I would not be outraged by it. And I go back to the folks that always said, oh, well, you're a Justify hater. It has nothing to do with my like or dislike of the horse. It has more to do with the fact that we never saw him run after the first weekend in June. And I know he had an injury, but he never faced older horses. He beat a pretty suspect group of horses as 3-year-olds. And I'll admit, early on, I thought the 3-year-olds were going to be quite good. Guess what? That's the beauty of time going by. You're able to go back and look. Bad opinion. They're not very good. You combine all that, and you compare that to a horse like Accelerate, who from start to finish ran faster than Justify, started his campaign earlier, ended it later, faced better horses, and ultimately won the biggest race that there is in the United States. And I say that with all due respect to a race like the Kentucky Derby, where most people think that that is our biggest race. That's fine. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. All I would say is I have a difficult time, and it goes back to the age restriction. I have a difficult time rewarding or saying that the biggest race that we have is a 20-horse stampede. They'll never face that many horses again. A lot of chaos. And it's a bunch of teenagers running against each other. It's not the best of the best. And don't tell me that it is, because that is incorrect. When was the last Kentucky Derby that was the best of the best? Yeah, I love to hear. The Breeders' Cup Classic is the culmination of a year end. You're going to have horses from all over the world coming there for your biggest prize. And ultimately, Accelerate, he handled it. And he overcame, call it what you will. There's no hate against John Sadler. It's just the John Sadler Breeders' Cup number was terrible. John Sadler's numbers outside of California, not very good. He overcame all that, and he got the job done. I voted for Horse of the Year, Accelerate. We're going to take a look. Here's his stretch run. To me, wasn't his best performance, but it was certainly the crowning achievement of the entire campaign, his win in the 2018 Breeders' Cup Classic.
They're into the stretch, and it's Accelerate, and on the inside, Mendelssohn, Thunder Snow, roaring up between those two as they arrive at the 8th pole. Then Yoshida, Axelrod, Ganavera's closing in late. It is Accelerate. He's coming down to the 16th pole in front. Thunder Snow on the inside is next. Then Mendelssohn, Ganavera, and Yoshida on the far outside. They're coming to the wire, and Accelerate wins the Breeders' Cup Classic for John Sadler.
So there you have it. I feel like I'm open to discussion. I'm open to hearing critiques or agreements or whatever it may be. Again, on Twitter, at Bernier_Matt, or beneath the video player on YouTube. Those are my horse awards. Again, if you have any sort of thoughts or you want to know about the human connections, I can tell you those on the side. I'm not going to go over those just because this podcast itself is already going to be a little bit as far as timing is concerned. So we're going to button this up. That's a wrap there. Let's quickly transition into the NFL Wildcard Weekend Superfecta. Wildcard Weekend is upon us for the NFL. 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. The winners will move on to the divisional weekend next weekend. As has been the case throughout the year, you know, normally I throw out the trifecta from a week-to-week standpoint, but guess what? Now that we have 4 games this weekend, you have the wild card superfecta. So we'll take them right in order. The Indianapolis Colts, they're at the Houston Texans. The Texans are laying a point at home. To me, this game kind of boils down to, is the Houston defense going to be able to neutralize Andrew Luck? Because if Luck is able to go out there and move the ball, he's going to do it to a degree. Don't get me wrong. I'd be stunned if Houston shut him down. But if he's able to go out there and move the ball at a reasonable rate, I still think Houston's going to be able to put points up on Indianapolis's defense. So in that respect, to me, I just kind of feel like it boils down to Luck. And I know that's a Captain Obvious thing to say, but if Luck goes out there and torches Houston, which hasn't really been the case with the Houston defense, it's been quite solid all year. If he's able to go out there and put up some points, then all of a sudden I think you got to be a little bit concerned. But I do think Houston will be able to move the ball in Indianapolis. And at the end of the day, as long as they can just keep Luck and company to a dull roar. I do like Marlon Mack. I think he's talented out of the backfield. Keep them to a dull roar. I think Houston wins this game, and I think ultimately they end up making a trip up my neck of the woods next weekend. They play in Foxborough. I like Houston at home -1. The Seattle Seahawks at the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are laying 1.5 points. To me, I'm in a situation like this, and again, you got to keep in mind from a football standpoint, home field is generally regarded as about a 3-point difference. If you look at it from that standpoint, they kind of view a scenario where at the end of the day, the Seahawks are on the road, so they're going to catch a few points extra for that. I think Seattle's a better team, plain and simple, and that's sort of reflected in the number being 1.5. I don't know that it's enough where, 1.5, you're basically just calling who's going to win the game. I think Seattle's a better team. Dallas, I'm still not totally convinced with. I know Prescott looked good, and I know they had to actually put the throttle down to win that game against the Giants last weekend, which is kind of a silly thing that they needed to do that because I could be wrong. I don't think there was any implication, win or lose. I think they were going to end up being in the seat that they were all along. I'm not totally convinced with Dallas. I haven't been all year. I've said it a number of times. I don't think the NFC East is spectacular. There is one team that's playing this weekend. We'll touch on them momentarily, that they're just red hot at this point. I just think Seattle's a better team. And I suppose if you're just going to give me points, I'll take them. Give me the Seahawks plus 1.5 on the road, but I'd take them outright in Dallas to get the job done. LA Chargers at the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are laying 2.5 points. You saw, I don't know if you want to call it a preview, but you saw this game just, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago on that, Thursday night? It was a Thursday night game. It was out in LA, which basically was a home game for the Ravens because LA doesn't have any fans. And it was a gross game. It was kind of that slow building kind of thing that if you like defense, like I do. I miss defense. I like these games that end up being a little bit more on the gross side, probably because the Patriots have played in a lot of them lately. I just think it's an interesting dynamic where the Chargers going into Baltimore, it's going to be interesting to see if they can get the ball rolling because they certainly had a major issue as far as the offense was concerned. And I know Keenan Allen was out or he was very dinged up at that point. It just still was one of those instances where I wasn't impressed with what I saw with them against Baltimore. Now, look, Baltimore very easily could have lost last weekend against Cleveland, but Cleveland red hot at this point, and they look quite nice moving forward into 2019. The Ravens laying 2.5. I think they win this game by a field goal. I think they get the job done, so I'm going to take Baltimore at home minus 2.5. And the last game is the Eagles +6 on the road at the Bears. This is another one, to me, that's very similar to the Colts-Texans game, where if the Bears shut down Foles, I think they win. Plain and simple. And I can't believe we're even talking about Nick Foles and another sort of miracle run. Because I don't know that the Eagles are great. But they're very, very hot right now. And you got to look at it and say they play. It seems like in the past 2 years, when the two quarterbacks have been playing separately, I mean, it looks like they have played better under Foles than they have under Wentz. If the Bears shut Foles down, it's over. I think Chicago will win pretty comfortably. If Philly can keep the ball moving a little bit, and I'm not saying they're going to go out there and throw up 28 or 30 points, but if they can go out there and score 20, can Mitchell Trubisky come back and score that many or outscore them? Because the Eagles' defense, I think, is a little bit better than people have given it credit for. Statistically, it hasn't been great this year, but last year you saw what they were capable of. I still think they're pretty damn good. If the offense for the Eagles can go out there and score some points, I think all of a sudden, if you put some pressure on Trubisky to have to score, I don't know that he's ready to do that. I'm not going to make a pick as far as who's winning this game because I think it's going to be pretty close. But I am going to take the Eagles +6 on the road just simply because I could see this thing going one way or the other. I listened to Bill Simmons earlier in the week, and I know he and Cousin Sal, they had talked about how if there was going to be a blowout, this would be the game and it would be the Bears. I'm not totally convinced, even if they do shut the Eagles down offensively, not totally convinced that this thing's going to be a blowout. Give me the Eagles on the road +6 at the Chicago Bears. I don't know who's going to win that game, but give me the Eagles catching points. So quickly recapping. Colts at Texans, Texans -1. Seahawks at Cowboys, Seahawks +1.5. Chargers at Ravens, Ravens -2.5. Eagles at Bears, Eagles +6. There you have it. My picks for NFL Wildcard Weekend, the Superfecta. If you've been listening live, thank you for doing so. Live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forms Twitter handle, at DRF Inside Post, or the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. If you are over on podcast form, like most of you do, if you listen to this in podcast form, like most of you do. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you're over on any of the podcast platforms, write us a review, give us a positive rating. If you're over, and please subscribe as well. If you're over on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, make sure the bell icon is lit up, and there's not a line through it, because that way you can get everything that we've got. Questions, comments, concerns. You agree, disagree with the horses that I voted for as far as the Eclipse Awards are concerned. Beneath the video player on YouTube, or as always, you can fire away on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. That's going to do it for this week's preview edition. We are going to come back with, we're going to follow this up right now as we always do with Out of the Gate, but I'll be back on Tuesday with the recap edition. We'll take a look at some of these big races from this weekend, most notably the Sham out at Santa Anita. We'll find out if Baffert has another giant in his barn named Coliseum. We'll see if he can get the job done. First time winners, first time going to turns. Without further ado, let's roll it into Out of the Gate. Best of luck this weekend, however you play, whatever you play, wherever you play. This has been the Matt Bernier Show.